And my daughter told my wife to tell dad to pray. The doctor says she has about 15 minutes. So, and my wife quickly got up to the pulpit and told me what my daughter said. And I put the microphone down and I said, all right, we're going to pray. And there's a miracle. We need a miracle right now. And her lungs had collapsed, and it was the second time. And I started to pray, and then the mic went dead. I looked at my sound person and I said, are these new batteries? He said, oh, yeah, we just put them in just before you started ministering. I said, oh, I know what this is. When I've gone and ministered in other countries, when God would do some miracle, the mic always died.
Welcome to the Immigrant Experience in America, an immigrant human library, where we amplify and humanize the experiences of immigrants in the United States and around the world. Listen in as we add another story to our immigrant human library.
It might seem like it's hard. And what I mean with our two special need boys is that I had to be consistent. If I said they're going to get punished for something, I had to follow through. I had to. I mean, I probably got home and I'm exhausted and I don't want to, but I have to follow through. I have to be consistent. And we did that. We did that with our two boys, completely consistent every single day. And it didn't matter how hard it was. But now they're going to reap the benefit. That they're going to be able to complete what they started. And my son, he's an AIT. He's already an E4, and he's only been in National Guard for 1 year. So, and I do advise any person that you're raising your kids, draw some lines and said, if you pass this one, I have to chastise you. Now, your way of chastising might be completely different than mine, but that way they have understanding that no means no. So when they hear no at school, they didn't get their feelings hurt. It's like, okay, I know what no is. My parents say no. And we need more of this. Our society is suffering because we have kids that are so used to getting what they want when they want it, that when they don't get it, they have breakdowns. So I do encourage every parent, keep on parenting.
Wow, that is such good advice. And our society needs that so much. That's amazing results I remember when we came to visit, right? And I think they were going through some struggles at the time, but in the last, I want to say 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
they've
Yes.
really done amazing. What, and for the listeners who might be wondering, what is AIT? Can you explain what that is, an E4?
Okay, so when you first join the army, you have to go to basic training. So everybody has to go through basic training. You can't go to the next phase until you finish basic training. So AIT stands for Advanced Individual Training. So that's going to be whatever training you need to go through for your particular job. So the military will train you for the job that you would have. So if you're going to be a medic, you're going to learn how to be a medic in the military, which means that when you get out of the military, you can go to be a nurse in a hospital and already got trained for it for free. So, so that's why I said, everybody should go ahead and do it, because you can get, if I just met this summer a young man. He is 22 years old. He is an airplane mechanic in the Marines. He says, I'm only going to be here for 1 more month, and then my term is over. I've already accepted a position in Boeing. I will be making $158,000 a year. So he was trained for free, and they paid him. And now when he gets out, he has a professional job. So these are the advantages you have. So that's AIT. My son now is going to infantry school, the other one, because the Marine does it different. The Marines have boot camp, and their boot camp is 13 weeks compared to the Army's 9 weeks. Then you get out for 10 days, and then you have infantry school, which is 2 months. So once he finished that, then he goes to the advanced individual training. So the Marine does a lot more training than the Army does.
And that is such good information for our listeners who might be here in the United States, and might have young men who are trying to figure out themselves. Um, just out of my own perceptions, it seems that, there's a lot of young men who seem to have identity issues,
Mhm.
and trying to figure themselves as they get to the teenage years and transitioning into adulthood. They really do struggle trying to figure out like what they want to do, what
Mhm.
profession, whether they want to go off to college. And oftentimes it appears that the military might be one avenue to help them just learn discipline and just get structure and figure themselves out as young men.
Right, right.
So that's awesome. It's great to hear. I know, Miss, your wife shared with me the story of your daughter. Boy, you are just like almost sounding like walking miracle. I mean, because when I heard the story of the daughter, your granddaughter, who had like such a 1% chance of living, and how you guys continued to pray for her, and you chose to allow her to live and see how God turned her life around, and she's now 2. Give us a little bit of how much you can share with us about that story. It would be such an inspiration for somebody who might be walking that journey today.
Well, when you are a parent of adults, it's very different than being a parent of a child. Um, Now it got to the point to where it's in my daughter's ballpark and her husband. We don't get to say, we just get to pray. So when she called my wife, she says, if something's wrong, I keep having to go pee. And my
Mm.
wife says, no, I think your water broke. And she said, no, no, my water couldn't have broken. It's only 15 weeks. And so when she kept describing it, I'm looking at my wife as she's talking to my daughter, and we're like, okay, we're getting in the car. We're driving. We're gonna be there as soon as we can. And my daughter lived in Orlando, Florida, and we're living in Anniston, Alabama. So it was almost a 7-hour drive. And so we didn't even worry about job or anything. We're going to deal with that tomorrow. And when we got there, her water did break. So then the question they gave her in Orlando was that she wanted an abortion, and so she said, "Dad, what do you think?" I said, "Honey, the decision is yours. You know, we have to stand by whatever decision you make." But we were praying at the same time. My wife and I were like, "Okay, we don't believe in certain things, as these are the areas where God decides." And so we were praying that my daughter would choose what God would decide. And she and her husband talked about it, and she told the doctor that the baby's heartbeat is strong. That's what the doctor said. The baby heartbeat is strong. So he said, okay, if this baby is fighting to live, then we're going to let the baby live. And if the baby dies, then it is God's will. So we'll do what God wants us to do. So then we put her in a car, and I looked at her husband and I said, I'm sorry. I'm not even asking for permission. We're taking our daughter home because she has a lot of people that can help her. In Orlando, there it was just them two. That's it. I said, figure it out. Hey, and come by the house when you're ready. But she has no water. She's pregnant, but all the fluid is gone. So she was on bed rest, and they said, well, we can't do anything until week 23. So can't do anything. If the baby stays in until week 23, then we can do something about it. So week 23, we took her to the hospital, and she stayed there, and the baby was born. It was week 28. The baby was born, and when she came out, oh, she looked so unfinished. It was, I'm looking at this little grandbaby and say, "Oh, Father, you're the God of miracles." So they kept trying for us to do funeral arrangements, and and they would talk to my wife and I about it, and we're like, we're not telling our daughter. We're just going to keep this information to ourselves because she's dealing with enough. And we will go by the hospital, and at least once or twice a week, it was a drive for us. And every time we got there, we're like, okay, Yes, we want to be with our grandbaby, but we need to take our daughter out. So we'll take her out to eat, and only because she's there all the time. So she needed to be out a little, and so we'll take her out to eat, and then she'll go right back to the hospital. And she had several moments of this is not going to get better. And one of them was we were having service, and my daughter calls my wife while I'm on the pulpit ministering, and my daughter told my wife that tell dad to pray. The doctor says she has about 15 minutes. So, and my wife quickly got up to the pulpit and told me what my daughter said. And I put the microphone down and I said, all right, we're going to pray. And there's a miracle. We need a miracle right now. And her lungs had collapsed, and it was the second time. And I started to pray, and then the mic went dead. And I looked at my sound person and I said, are these new batteries? He said, oh, yeah, we just put them in just before you started ministering. I said, oh, I know what this is. When I've gone and ministered in other countries, when God would do some miracle, the mic always died. So I looked at my wife. I said, God already did it. It's done. It's a done deal. And my granddaughter never had another problem in that hospital. Never did. So I'm so grateful that God did a miracle in her. And when she was leaving the hospital, all the doctors and nurses were outside waving at our grandbaby leaving, and they're saying that's our walking miracle. So, and I'm so grateful. And as I said, she's 2 years old. She's a handful. But I tell you, I love her being a handful because of how she started. Now, when you see her running all over the place and trying to speak Spanish and English at the same time, and she loves to laugh, and she has to have a mouth wide open to laugh. But we won't have it any other way. So we're really blessed to be able to have her in our lives, and we can't see her enough. We we drive there to Orlando at least one weekend every month to be with our grandbaby.
Wow, what a powerful story. My gosh. Um, I know you're also a musician, right? Partly, I think you studied music, you used to perform. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, if people want to look you up, just be interested in your background and check out your book and just get a little bit about who you are.
Well, I feel like that's almost another life ago. I have been a musician when I met my wife. That's what I did for a living. I have performed for two presidents of the United States, and I do have a master's in music. I have a bachelor's in music performance, and I so enjoyed doing that. That's what I wanted to do all the days of my life, is just continue to perform, and then God called me into ministry, and that kind of changed my plans. But I have performed at 69 countries. So and I do have some shorts that I wrote, but I only did it as a project for school. And then my professor told my wife to keep telling me I need to keep on writing. So, but I decided to write words instead of music. But I did that for a really, really long time. And we had to stop when we adopted our two boys. One of them has separation anxiety. And because of that, I couldn't travel anymore. So when we got home, and my wife and I, we looked at each other and say, okay, what can we do? I can't perform. That's how I make a living. I perform. And because I am a concert pianist, a lot of Americans are not into classical music. So my performance were in other countries. So we looked at each other and said, well, you know what? We are teachers. We can teach. We've always taught, and even without degrees, we were teaching somebody something. One of my piano students, his albums, I think first and second album, were nominated for a Grammy. So I was teaching long before I was a teacher. So we both went back to school to get our teaching certificate, and that's how the journey of being a school teacher happened. And it was because of our two boys. But now they're gone. So now I'm contemplating maybe I shall revisit being a concert pianist again.
Oh, and the thought just came to me. You said that you adopted the two gentlemen who are, you mentioned just now, the twins, and the challenges and how the success and God just really moving in their life. I'm sure you guys prayed a lot. I'm sure it was not easy to have two young boys who were given that sort of prognosis for their lives, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's not that you literally went out and adopted children. It's kind of like it was something that happened, right? Can you tell us, like, how did you guys become to be adoptive parents of these two young men?
Well, we didn't choose. So recently, we have the opposite. So let me start with the opposite. At my son's graduation, the biological mom just showed up. Hadn't seen him in 17 years, and she just showed up. I needed to be at my son's graduation, and we're like, "You've done no support or nothing, not anything for 17 years." And then she showed up at when my son graduated from boot camp. She was there too, and it's like, "Oh yeah, I wanted to." So let me explain how it started. Now that you know where we caught up to where we are right now. Um, we get a phone call in the middle of the night, and it's a distant relative. So they said, well, we're living here in Alabama and in Dothan, which is 5 hours from where we are. And the state took my kids. Would you temporarily take them in while I get myself settled? So both, my wife and I, of course, I'm in ministry now, and it's like, okay, family needs help. We need to go help. So we drove to Dothan and picked up the two boys. On the way home is when we realized something's off with these boys. I mean, they're really not acting, what a normal 3 year old and and a 1 year old would act. So we went and spoke to the pediatrician, and of course my wife is the one that spoke to her. So the pediatrician said, "Oh, they just need some whoopings. That's okay. They just need some discipline. That's all." So she kept telling my wife, it's like this, all they need is some discipline. They only need discipline. So I walked into the office like a month later and said, they need more than discipline. These kids is not a discipline issue. Can you please have them tested? And and of course, being that the dad is asking, she heard. So she had them tested, and we had the neurologist and pediatrician, the psychologist, the psychiatrist. We had a team, and they were all in a different city, so we had to drive all over the place once a week for these two boys. So when we were returning them, now it's 3 months later, we're at court, and we are returning these boys because they were a headache. And when I tell you, they would be eating their feces and drinking their urine. Yes, it was bad. Okay, so we were ready to give them up. We're like, okay, thank you, Lord God. These are not our kids. We're going to give these back to their mom. So the mom stood up and says, I relinquish my parental rights to the whites. And I stood up and said, Your Honor, I don't want those spawns of Satan. I just do not want. and, and then the judge says, I understand, they have all these problems, and they're allergic to everything, and now you got to revert back to baby food because they were introduced to foods too early, and it's their body stunk. I mean, it was horrible. They smell all the time like they did number two all the time. So we were ready to let go of them, and so the judge had a list of everything that was wrong with them. And she says, well, they'll stay in the system until they're 21. And then most likely they'll go from that system to another system. But Reverend, it's up to you. So when I walked out of the room, and my wife took a look at me because she was outside of the courtroom holding the two boys, and she got one look at me and she said, "No, no, no." I said, "Honey, they're ours now. They're our problem." And
Because you already had two children. You had two daughters, right?
we have three. We're at
Three.
a
Oh,
son
yes,
and
a
two
son and
daughters.
two daughters.
We already had three of our own, and then to come home with two more, and then because they were introduced to these foods too early, we had to revert back to baby food. Well, not to make them feel isolated. We all did, as a whole family. We all reverted back to baby food. We all went, okay, now we're going to introduce this week. And now we're going to introduce the next thing this week. And now we're going to introduce, and we had to because that was the only way we were going to get rid of that smell. Their bodies didn't know how to absorb the nutrients out of the food because the mom gave it to them when they were babies. So it's like she didn't know anything about parenting. I mean, no clue at all, So, and then we got rid of the smell, but they didn't get potty trained until 8 years later. So you can imagine how much we've had to go through with these two boys. But I'm telling you, now we look back at it and it's like, we thank you, Lord God, that we went through, because you can't tell. You can't look at our boys and tell that they've had that difficulty growing up. You won't be able to pick it up. And they're very honorable. You talk to them, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Yeah, I mean, they're straight arrows, but it took a lot of work.
I'm sitting here like, where did you guys find the time? You have three children of your own. I think your wife was working, you're pastoring, and to take on two special needs with this level of need.
Oh, it got even worse. We had our former foster child. Their kids were taken away, and she called us. Can you please take in my kids? Can you please? You're the only parents I know. Can you please? So on top of those two, we ended up having three foster kids that the state gave us zero to take care of. So and then one of the foster boys, he is also autistic. So we've had a challenge, and then they were still part of our lives because we had them, and 3 years later, one of the members of our church adopted all three of them. So when we have visitors come to our church, I said, listen, whenever you see some kids calling me dad, don't get ideas. Okay, I am the only dad they know. I didn't cheat on my wife. So it's interesting. Every time we have new company, the youngest, she's 7 now, but we had her when she was 5 months old, and she could barely breathe. Every time she coughed, it was all this black tar that come out because they were smoking weed and cigarettes around her. But she was so dear to her. So she's 7 now, and every time we have company, she decides to run up to me and daddy this and daddy the other and daddy the next. And I'm like, oh, so I have to warn people when they come to church. It's like, yes, I do have other people that call me daddy, and yes, I am their dad. Don't you tell her I'm not, because she's gonna fuss at you.
Oh my gosh, where did you get that type of capacity?
Well, the Bible says that this is how you know that they are sons of God, by how we show love one to the other. And I think that's what we're missing. Our kids lack people showing them love, proper love, not the junk that we see on TV. Someone that they can actually look up to and ask for advice, and the person, when they treat them like if they're their own kids. So in our church, it's a little bizarre because I have there's a young man. He is now 15 years old. He's Caucasian, and his parents, of course, are Caucasian, but he's called me Papi all his life. From the moment he could talk, he's called me Papi. So then when people walk in, it's like, why is he calling you Papi? We'll have the Mexicans and Guatemalans, and they're like, why is this white boy calling this man, Poppy. And I was like, listen, if that's what he wants to call me, then I'm going to act like it. When he needs to be chastised, hey, I'm going to chastise him like if he's mine, and I'm going to love him like he's mine, and he feels like he's mine. Even though he has a mom and dad. So I still end up being a surrogate father, and I think we need that more often. This is what the older people used to do. They used to always, you can count on the neighbor across the street that they're going to make sure to watch your kid and make sure your kid's not getting in trouble. And but now we have parents that are like, oh, leave my kid alone, why are you in my kid's business? And it's the old proverbs from Africa was, it takes a community to raise a child. And I think we need to go back to that, to where we can find trusted people and say, listen, help me with mine. And my wife and I can tell you that our two boys turned out this way, but we didn't do it all by ourselves. We have a community of people that we can count on. When we have to go somewhere, can you please watch our two boys? And they knew there were handfuls, and now when they're doing well, they can receive some of that glory too. It's like, yeah, because they can. Like, our two boys have surrogate grandparents. And they treat them like that's their grandkid, and every time we needed somebody to pick them up from school, they're their surrogate grandparents picking them up, and now whenever the surrogate grandparents need help, it's like, can you let Adrian come and cut the grass? It's like, Adrian, you got to go to cut your granddad's grass, and they were beneficial for us. We needed a large community to raise kids that have phenomenal problems. But if we can go back to that, go back to, let's raise our kids as a community. Stop thinking that you're the only one and you have to shelter your kids from the world. And when you shelter the kids from the world, the kids don't know how to relate to the world they're in. And so it takes all of us. Let's just go back to that.
Wow, we're getting so many lessons, life lessons, nuggets from you, Pastor. I can't help but call you Pastor. I know you're now a doctor, musician and all of this, but I think Pastor, because of your heart and how much you're impacting the community, I think that's like the more powerful one for me.
Join us next time for part 3 of this episode. We thank our listeners around the world, and we appreciate your continued support as we build our human library. Please remember to give us a 5-star review, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, and circle of influence.